minutes, and we don't inflict the lunch. My name is Luuk van Wielen. I'm at Delft University of Technology, professor in that area, actually for most of my career, and made a relatively recent shift to Ireland to lead a structured materials institute. So my background is more like the topics that we have discussed, have been engaged in projects in Brazil, and we are still engaged in those projects. The landscape of where I come from, originally, Northwestern Europe, is fairly different from what we have been discussing among the Brazilian friends and what was the topic of today in this part of the world in India. What we see that is that a number of consumers themselves start to organize themselves. So for instance, Sky Energy is a company that's a spin out of KLM. They are leading an investment group that has now also a takeoff agreement for sustainable aviation fuel for plant to be built in the Netherlands starting, well in a way, last year already. Announcements were last year. Our engagement is not that much to develop further fuel technology, and I'll give you in a moment the why. You know, the target is there to look into the next generations of how these plants can be made more sustainable, economically and from a climate perspective. And materials and chemicals play a big role. So my career has been mostly in topics like what we have been discussing today and yesterday, so I feel very comfortable in the discussion, but I'm not going to repeat that discussion. Now we have all the talent in the house and the senior industry leadership to bring it further. I would like to start at the other side, the more societal side, because that is where I shifted to during my career from an engineer and be more engaged with the European and the Dutch program. I moved to Ireland, and let me give you a little bit of the same discussion that we had about urgency, but from a different perspective. In 1929, that was the year in which the Republic of Ireland became independent. There was really serious leadership in setting up a first electricity scheme. 40% of the national budget went into this project, which was built by Siemens. 4 turbines in the major river of the island of Ireland. Fantastic leadership. We could look for that sort of leadership today, I would say, because the challenges are very comparable to what they were seeing at that moment in time. If you look though at the technology of that moment, cast iron type of turbines, 25 tons. If you would look at it with the eyes from now, with the advanced composites technology as we are developing in my institute, the turbines would be only 20% of that weight. The manufacturing cost in comparable terms would be less than half of the manufacturing cost of that moment. And the overall construction of the utility would be significantly lower. That's what structured materials can do for you. So the focus on the energy carriers is a good thing, but we should be looking also a step ahead. Wind turbines, you know, they're still all fossil-based materials. So that needs to shift as well. So that's where my interest in materials comes from. The second point, if you look at 1929 Ireland, that then 40 megawatts could serve the whole country. And since then, the country did not increase dramatically in population from 3 million at that point in time to 4.5 million only. But the electricity needs, as you can see here, have risen tremendously, almost an order of magnitude. Our behaviors are completely different from 1929 behaviors, and that is, I think, what we see all across the planet. Yesterday it was somebody who had all sorts of sound effects like wows and so on. I'm not going to repeat that. We know the issues that climate has. We have seen many forms of that. I need to tell that to, for instance, my president at the university, who's a medical doctor who prioritizes cancer research over giving me budget. And the way that I usually tell him, because he is a medical doctor, that we talk about planetary health rather than human health. And that if 0 degrees from raise from 37 is normal, that plus 2 degrees, which was the Paris discussion, gives you a very high fever, and plus 4 degrees gives you a coma. So he starts understanding that. And yeah, the tragedy of the issue is that most of the impacts are in the developing part of the world, and that is tragic. So there's a good reason to move there. And much of this sort of insights I got from all sorts of collaborations that we had with Brazilian friends and with the World Bank, with several other authorities, and that landed in a group that's called bioenergy and sustainability that we'll see in Luuk's edition, led from the state of Sao Paulo actually, but in combination with UN and UNEP and so on. We need to get that message out. The message is important. Structural materials can do a lot for us in this scheme. So this is beyond what pure bio component can do. But I'll try to bring it to the bio component from that perspective. Some of that can do with structural materials. That is, some of the possibilities are shown here, including health. So bringing it back to my origin, which is northwestern Europe, and the diagram that you see here is the steady stationary source carbon emissions. So it sort of coincides with all the chemical industry locations. So the number one is Germany, and number two, it's very questionable, number two is the Netherlands, and so you can see that. The importance of doing that is, of course, industrial activity, and it's very much related to transport in Europe. That's why the Netherlands has a position at all in this whole debate. You have a hub, the Rhine River, is sort of at the top. I don't have a pointer, but you know where that is. And why do we do all of that? Well, to create jobs. So this is the bottom diagram is jobs per hectare. Red is high and blue is low. So all these things go inside. That means that we have a fantastic opportunity to create new jobs. So let's look at the whole carbon emission problem in a different way and put value to that. Because my story is more about the value created than about the climate side. We have emphasized the climate side already a lot. But this has enabled the largest, still the largest industry cluster worldwide. It's mostly fossil. It's a mostly fossil cluster, you know. And for instance, talking about sustainable aviation fuels, half of European aviation fuels are manufactured in Port of Rotterdam. So for the country, it's not only about domestic flying, it is about an economic opportunity that will be gained or lost. So that is why we prioritize in our national policies a couple of things. Chemical sector, because it gives access to renewable materials, and the transport, particularly beyond what is light vehicle transport. So how do we get the planes in the air, ships out, and so on. That is what is key in our planning. Again, this created about half, this cluster only with 40 million people, created half of the GDP of India, created half of the GDP of the UK, and about 10% of the EU GDP. So what has science done to this? You know, all these possibilities. So for investors, this is a nightmare. Where do you start in this whole curve? What are you going to produce in this scene? 80% of the chemicals in the port of Rotterdam, it's a large chemical cluster, can be produced. There is technology around to do so. So some guidance is needed into how to make choices. And having been a little period in my life at Royal Dutch Shell, I had a very good colleague said, well, why don't we try to map the diagram as follows. So in this chemical world, in which carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen play an important role, you find all the fuels, all the energy carriers on the bottom of this triangular diagram. And that's good because of the high energy density. The high energy density goes up if there's more oxygen in the molecule. So if you look into where we earn money from in this part of the world, it is not particularly from the fuels, it is the lowest part of it. If you look at oil companies at this moment, they're in a very serious situation. But the money comes from chemicals, the money comes from materials. Actually all the revenue comes from that side. And for none of the functions of polyethylene, polypropylene, polystyrene, BPC, you need the high energy density. As a matter of fact, you rather have not a high energy density for packing and insulation materials. You would like to have something that is much more flame resistant, for instance. So if we move, and the reason for that is of course that the feedstock was the fossil feedstock with this high level of chemical production. So at the moment we bring in bio, we get to this problem. There's too much oxygen in these molecules, we get this sort of product. And energy carriers will remain important, whatever we do. Electrical will be playing a role, but the energy carriers will be important. But the question is, can you connect the remainder of the bio, that could be as simple as for ethanol fermentation, carbon dioxide, the two sectors, that could absorb as much as the fuel sector is dealing with. So I made a little line up there. So global fuels is 2 billion tons, jet is about 15% of that at the moment. There's a fast growing one, about double rate the rest of fuels. But if you take, for instance, construction sector, that is about that size. And construction sector would be very interesting to look into as a sink for the carbon dioxide. You know, plastics and steel is a net producer as well. So why don't we try to find a way in which we still, taking bio-based resources as a starting point, produce the fuels that we need, probably less for the light vehicle transport and more for heavy-duty transport, and try to find a way to put value to carbon dioxide, which means basically shifting up in that the diagram. But that looks like a mission impossible. Well, that mission is not fully impossible. And this is only one of the many ideas that is floating around. We have heard this morning a few others that are dealing, for instance, lignin into the road and so on, you know, which is another track of possibilities. And I don't debate it, it's very good. But another one, now if you look into the creation of sandstone, the geological creation of sandstone, it is in fact a microbial process in which microbes bind their own carbonate with, well, very much dependent upon the rest of the elemental composition in soil, in sand, and by doing so they create a much more dense system around them. So carbon dioxide permeation and oxygen permeation get less and less and less. So that process takes ages. You know, the formation of sandstone takes ages. But at the moment you start injecting it, and that was what happened with some of my colleagues in Delft in this bottom left diagram, 100 cubic meters of sand, and then they actively pumped in carbon dioxide with some of the nutrients and so on. They could solidify that block of 100 cubic meters in about a week, at the strength that could park your car on it. At this moment that developed further into much more higher density materials. That's very comparable to the current concretes. You can store somewhere between 50 and 100 kilograms of carbon dioxide per cubic meters. This creates value. And instead of many of the other CCU methodologies. But for a country like we are here today with the massive construction works, as I have been seeing them landing in Mumbai and getting here in Pune, and I've been seeing them in Calcutta, everywhere construction is there. So there is a sink in which you may be connecting to fuels creation in the country. Well, logistic nightmare, but this is an opportunity that we should probably be looking at seriously. If we try to get a more systematic approach to these sort of things, I tried to rank the various possible feedstocks from the perspective of their energy density, so combustion energy as an measure for that. And I did do the same thing for many of the products. So it is obviously that at the moment you would keep the same sort of energy levels in these compounds, the yields would be very comparable. Methane as natural gas to methane in a truck has the same energy density, right? And the same is about true for things like jet fuel and so on. But at the moment you start with sugars, the biomass and so on, you have this yield problem. And at the moment you don't have an answer to that. You buy in significantly more material and the carbon dioxide side of it is not getting any value. So creating value for oxygen is, I think, very important, and that gets you away from plastics that don't have that the high oxygen content. So let me take as example the bottle. This is a PET bottle. So the oxygen content of the bottle is relatively modest, and the function of the bottle is, well, for PET is mostly to keep the carbonate in the carbonated drinks, right? So the barrier function is important. You can easily replace the PET by PLA, which has a significantly higher oxygen content, you know, so for the planet and for utilization of biomass, this is a better way to go. So that sort of perspectives need to be factored in. Level playing field is important in these cases. And what we would like to demonstrate is that we need to connect a few of these markets, which are typically not talking to one another. The fuels market and the construction market, you know, they have nothing in common. They don't talk at all. So that is an issue. Knowing this sort of yields, the center axis is like the yields that you will be getting, not just thermodynamics and stoichiometry. But it can give you direct access to what would be the percentage of feedstock cost for these compounds. And then we can start looking into whether there are level playing fields, which are not around at this moment. And that has, of course, to do a lot with pricing of the fossil resources. Being on this vein, and then I think, start to wind up. In about 2004, we had very similar discussions as what I hear in this country, in Brazil. What are we going to do? So this is like a line for the roadmaps that we developed starting 2004, from very low TRL levels in the bottom of the diagram to TRL levels of 8 and 9, to get to a system that is commercial. At that moment, we said, there's a few challenges. One of them will be dealing with biomass, the whole discussion about pretreatment. We thought that is the easy one, and the more complicated one is the one to get molecules out that we really want, instead of ethanol, which, let's face it, is not the best fuel, it is not the best chemical, but it is a good chemical, it is a good fuel, but you would maybe like something else. So the pathways to produce that were, in our opinion, more challenging. So we had a few of those with targets, getting up the first generation, and much of this was not to be implemented in the Netherlands. This was for the global plans of our industries, mostly. We monitored what everybody was doing when the pilot plants were getting up. Well, you know the story. The first fuel plants came up, so around 2016 and 17, had all the problems that we would expect. Some of them were really very basic problems, and they had been built. Now, they are not the best facilities worldwide, but they are there, and they are the first good attempts. I think the leadership in this company should be stimulated. I'm very happy to see what I heard today by and others, that leadership is in other places as well. Some people lose their faith because it is a journey, it is significant investment, but it needs to be done. The only way that you can learn how this industry works is by doing it, and I'm really happy to see that happens. This way. It also tells you when things need to be up and running. A pilot plant is a very complicated hobby. There's no money going in, there's no money going out, so money going into a pilot plant. But it is necessary. We are at the stage in which we need to do this sort of stuff. We could plan it, and that's what we exactly did do in the Netherlands. We looked into all sorts of possibilities, like how do you deal with components that are seen as an inhibitor in ethanol fermentations. All of that went into scientific publications, patents, and into products like the yeast that the DSM company has commercialized and see in a number of plants. But it also led to a couple of surprises, like for instance, the C5 structures that give you furanic components, which are particularly difficult inhibitors for fermentation. But what turned out is that they are a really good replacement for the aromats that are in the same bottle. So there's a lot of opportunities that arise at the moment you get on that path. It's their 10-year journey. Well, most of you will probably know that, or the same sort of processes, 10 years, a lot of capital. But it is all there. It is a reality. It is now starting a reality. The debate in Europe is significant on fuels. You probably have seen that. But look at how a company like Shell, who only now tries to move on in a sustainable track, relative to a company like DSM, how that reflected itself in shareholder value. Shell has been sort of on the same level for a long period of time, and companies like DSM have tripled or quadrupled their shareholder value. So that is where it is. If I'm an investor with a few billion to invest, this is the way to go, and so on. So the world has changed completely. These plants are coming. There's a PLA plant. This number 2 is their commercial scale. To look into this Dutch story. Waste BOD, not in biogas, which is good. Biogas is a solution to some problems. But biogas into something like fatty acids for food purposes is a very different story as a base component for other opportunities and so on. Classical ports like Rotterdam, they are attracting seriously this sort of industries. And more importantly, the retail organizations like Heineken is now greenifying its transport. It needs to have the biofuels because it needs to be also sustainable. So the world is really changing from the time that I started with all of this. And the aviation fuels, everybody's struggling with advanced cost of these. So we need to bring incentive schemes in place in order to make the first commercial cases. And there's a struggle, but I'm sure that we will survive that discussion. The newest development is, electricity is getting cheaper and cheaper. North Sea wind electricity is at the level of a coal-based power plant, 7 cents kilowatt hour. So it is getting there. Cheap electricity will be abundant. That gives a entirely different way of putting energy into molecules. You've seen the gas fermentations. I thought about gas fermentation, but it needs to couple one way or another to the excess energy that comes from the electro world. And there's a number of trial projects there. I think one of the most interesting ones at this moment is the Yvonne Siemens facility that is up, but still all there. I'm not going to discuss the biorefinery structures. We have discussed all of that, but I will only show you one diagram after we did do our work in the port of Rotterdam, which has led to, it started with students filling all sorts of wild ideas. And from those ideas, we did do a number of serious engineering company related works to screen them. At the end of the day, there are now these clusters available, and the investment decision about the aviation fuels plant has been announced. I think this is a diagram that gives you a little bit of a trick and guidance to it. So what it does show is the price for the two main products. So in general, these biorefineries have two products. The target product is sugar or ethanol or pulp or starch, this sort of agro industries, agro-forestry industries, and you have the rest, which is waste. So the current strategies are to have a combination in which you at least take the power consumption of the plant, and then in which you take at least the power consumption of the plant. That gives a very low value to lignin. From an investor perspective, you would like to be both prices very high. And the diagonal line that you see, that is the net present value of an investment. A number of different scales, and I did not go into the detail. But a relatively expensive feedstock, wood chips in the port of Rotterdam, is a relatively expensive feedstock, but it is around, there's 2 million tons of there. There's more sugar imported by wood than sugar produced in the Netherlands. At the bottom X, I put also a number of alternatives in it, so HFO, heavy fuel oil, that comes in at price range of around 400 euros per ton. This is not a low cost compound, this is a significant scale. Well, we spoke about ligno components. Ligno-urethanes form extremely good insulation materials with a very low footprint and with the same qualities as, for instance, expanded polystyrene and so on. So if you look from that perspective, and this diagonal line, which is representing the net present value of being zero of a plant, so below the line it is not investable, above the line you come in an investable area. And what you see that is that if you start looking into, for instance, construction sector with insulation materials, which is absolutely necessary in a low temperature place that I come from, but maybe also for climate issues in this part of the world, to protect people against the heat. That is a significant scale opportunity, much better than power, as you can see, and it will help you lower cost of sugar if you wish, or it gives you more flexibility in the operations. So I've done a lot of this sort of scenario analysis. All these sort of industries are around in the chemical clusters: Rotterdam, Houston, Singapore, around here, and so on. And you can put companies to that, so you can identify those folks already. There's infrastructure, so how do you connect infrastructure to, for instance, from Rotterdam, get down to the car manufacturing in southern Germany and make sure that the plastics get in there. Ethanol to ethylene is a simple investable process. But to utilize the pipeline infrastructure, that's a different go. So we try to look into this sort of opportunities. We have done really all the analysis for what that could entail, and part of marine, and maybe in the future also the aviation side sort of lean on that. And our chairman and I discussed a little bit other purposes for this sort of material, like for instance lignin into carbon fiber. Carbon fiber that can give you at car quality composites that can give you wind energy with blade level qualities. It's not yet good enough for aviation, but we get there. You know? So there are, I think, a tremendous number of opportunities which are important for Northwestern Europe to sustain income and so on. But I would claim that also for this country, a higher added value track would be a good way to go. Anyhow, with that, I would like to close off. I think there's a need for thinking a little bit beyond a single market. There needs to be coupling of these markets, one way or another. And with that, I would like to close. I had a few, the last point was a few case studies on the Brazilian situation and on an Irish opportunity. I don't go into that at all. But if you're really interested, I give the full presentation at ICT in Mumbai on Tuesday, so you're all invited there somewhere in the end of the afternoon. Thank you very much.
You can have one question.
That was quite a tour de force. If a sugar miller asks you what, and he wants to diversify his business, what off-the-shelf technology would you recommend him or her to invest in?
I think my recommendation to him will be to give me a call and that we have a good discussion over the local context and we take it from there.
I'm PH Srikanth, Pune. You have mentioned that alcohol-based ethylene that will cater to the needs of the plastics industries of the European Union. Okay, but as of today, stoichiometrically, 2,400 liters of alcohol that is used in the reactor to produce 1 ton of ethylene. Okay, cost-wise, it is not economically feasible as on today as compared to the ethylene based on the naphtha. If you catalytically crack naphtha, 1 ton of naphtha, 25% mass by mass ethylene is produced. Okay, as in today in India, at the rate of the 37,500 rupees per ton of naphtha, landing cost in the industry, based on that naphtha, ethylene production is more economically feasible than alcohol-based ethylene today in India. This is the situation.
I'm not going to debate this at all. You're probably correct in the numbers, but let me give you a different perspective. Lactic acid technology is about as simple as ethanol manufacturing lactic acid. You know, if you produce a cell phone on the basis of lactic acid that is locally produced, you bring in a chipset that you can get from wherever. You can produce locally a cell phone. You know, everybody would like to have a cell phone every 2 years because the model is out or whatever. You know, it's a big phone. You can create significantly more value in a distributed way. So my challenge, I know I'm not answering you, but I want to put this anyhow. But my challenge is a bioeconomy in a more distributed way can bring more value locally to, for instance, the farmers. If part of that community is also producing high-end materials locally, you know, there is more ownership. So I question whether the bioeconomy should only be seen in the form of scaling up, and that sometimes local high-added value components for which there is a tremendous market. Here in India, I haven't seen people in this country without cell phones. You know, they want a new phone every 2 years, maybe every year. My kids want every year. Yeah.